Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and hello, and welcome to Books from My Library. My name is Kimolisa Mings. I'm a reader. I love to read and I love to write. Now, as a self-published author, I have to ask myself, how are readers going to find my books? And so I got to thinking about the books that are in my library and how I came to come across them, to decide to go with them, and that's what this series is all about. They are books from my library. So this week, the first of 3 books is White Oleander by Janet Fitch, and I came across this book at the airport just as I was leaving for my, well, actually not the Antiguan airport, it was the airport in New York when I was boarding the flight to go to my study abroad in Florence, Italy. Sorry, I I tripped over Florence because it's natural for me to go Firenze, Italia. Anyway, it looked interesting, and one of the things maybe what pushed me over is that it had the Oprah's book club icon right there. And up until that point, I don't think I've ever read any, at that point, I didn't read any of her book club suggestions, so I went with this and I found it interesting. There are maybe 1 or 2 scenes that I remember about the book, but I can't. I remember some of the things I remember is what I was doing while reading the book, one of which was that I was at the Gucci factory waiting for a presentation that they were going to have, and I was reading this book, and I think what would have pulled me would have been the cover. It looked interesting. I never really saw anything where they had such a font being used, and then also being an Oprah book club selection. And I guess at that point it was like, this was maybe one of the first books that I ever saw with the icon, and I was like, and I read the back and I was like, okay, let me try it. With that said, I'm not really into Oprah book club selections because of another book. I can't remember the name. I clearly remember the cover, but it was just so gut-wrenchingly sad that I was just like, you know what? No, I'm not going back there. And I don't think of myself as a book club person, even though I read so much, because I have a feeling that if I don't like a book, I'll just stop, or life happens, so I might not keep up. So that's why I'm not into the book club scene. But I must say I did appreciate this book, so that's why it's still in my bookshelf. Now the next book is Bloodchild by Octavia Butler. Now this is the only book I've read by Octavia Butler, although I've heard so much about her, and I think one of the books is Kindred. And when I first picked up this book, first of all, it was at the Best of Books bookstore, and I came across it and I was like, okay. And I think it may have been in the used book selection, and I saw it and I was like, okay, let me try her out. And to be frank, when I first read it, I didn't really understand Octavia Butler's world. From what I understood, she was black sci-fi, but I didn't conceptualize it. So when I started reading the first story, because it's a collection of stories, and I was reading it and I just wasn't grasping it. It was just like, what now? What is this about? And the descriptions I think it was more like you're going into this world that's not like what you're used to. And everyone else knows what's going on, but you're slowly catching on. And there are little, like, how you say, it lets you know what's going on and that there's something underlying. So I just, at first time I picked it up, I just couldn't get into it. But then the second time, I was just going through because, you know, sometimes with books, you're just in a different place, your mindset is different, or you're just more open, or in my case, I may have more iron in my system than not. Yes, I'm anemic, so that messes with me. But when I picked up this book again and I read it, I really enjoyed it because each story was different, and I felt a little bit of like, she's like Stephen King light with a black angle. And when I say Stephen King light, it's like, it's not only people moving through the systems. It's more like I'm feeling their journey. I'm understanding that this is a different world, and it's not only an unusual world, but it's a world that you understand the person's place in it. So I really appreciate this book, and I see myself reading more of her work. I have to get around to. And I'm wondering, I'll figure that out. But yeah, that's why this book is in my library, and it was a situation where I found it at a bookstore, at the Best of Books bookstore. Yeah. And you know what, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if I end up just maybe picking up the book every now and then and just like reading a story, because I appreciated each story and I just loved the world that she built. So that is book 2, Bloodchild by Octavia Butler. Now the last book is, and it's non-fiction, is Masters of Enterprise. Shiny cover, shiny cover. Ooh, okay. And it's by H.W. Brands. Now, actually, I came across this book. I feel like it was the Brooklyn Library. I have a thing for libraries anywhere in the world except for Florence, because I don't think I could have gotten into the library. I did look. I did check. But I came across this in the library, and I found the stories interesting because behind every brand, and it's funny that the author's name is Brands. Anyway, there's a story behind it. You come to realize that everything you come across, every company you come across, it has the story behind it. And that is what I appreciated about this book, is that you have these known companies, known entities, and they tell you what they did, how they achieved what they achieved. And to be honest, some of those that from like the 1800s, they were ruthless, to be honest. And it really makes you question, there is morality and then there's getting stuff done. And it now makes me wonder if you can get the things done so that you can meet the needs of morality in terms of giving to charitable organizations. So although I'm in the space where I'm pulling away from business, but because I grew up in business and primarily retail, it's something I don't think I will ever leave because it's like kind of ingrained in me. But I find that I think the main reason, actually, sorry, I think, now I read the book in the library, but I think at some point I got the opportunity to buy it and I bought it. And I think I may have also bought it so that a family member, maybe my brother, I wanted it for my brother, but I never gave it to him. Oops. So those are 3 books from my library. So we have White Oleander. I saw this in a bookstore, an airport bookstore, which is interesting because airport bookstores normally have bestsellers or even book club selections for the traveler who just wants to pick up something and go, which is this book and one of my favorite books, The Elegance of the Hedgehog. So there's that. And then we have Bloodchild by Octavia Butler. This was a bookstore find, but then I already knew of her and I wanted to read her work. And then we have Masters of Enterprise, and I came across this in a library and I valued enough to want to buy it for a family member, but they never got it. So that's it for this week. Thank you for reaching this far, and I guess I'll see you next week. Bye!